Hey guys, welcome back to the AA podcast. I'm Adam, this is Annie.
Hi, I'm Annie.
And we are back for episode 5, I believe it is. And shortly after the other one, we did not have a 4-year break in between.
Yeah, no, well done.
Yeah,
well done us.
Good. So we did have a little bit of an agenda today, not very much. It was about one sentence of agenda, but we had a bit of a situation today. In fact, a lot of a situation.
Yeah, so you contacted me at about 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And somebody had come in to the Brentwood Academy of where you have the teaching.
Yeah.
With a vascular occlusion.
Yeah. So for a long time now, people have contacted us when they have an occlusion that they've been unable to fix, or they're a client and their practitioner has been unable to fix it.
Yes.
Or in a lot of cases, which is very unfortunate and extremely bad, the injector has disregarded them completely to the degree where sometimes they even block them completely. But on this occasion, we got a message through Eclipse, and it basically said, I've got someone who's got an occlusion. I think they said it was from nasolabial. Mm-hmm. I was actually teaching someone ultrasound today, and I said, oh, bring them in and I'll have that as part of my ultrasound lesson to this lady, Jen. And the lady turned up with the occlusion, and it was a lot more than I expected.
When you sent me the image, I was actually with a client, and I took a deep breath.
Yeah. I must admit, I was not expecting that, because normally maybe someone would say it's really bad or something, but where I was busy teaching and this just got passed through, Holly literally walked in the room and said, there's a VO, like, can you fix it? And I said, yeah. I said, where is it? She said, nasal, and that was it. But then when the lady turned up, it was not just in her nasos, it was the whole entire half of her face, from her chin to literally her hairline.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I think the one thing with this, we will get into the details, won't we? The one thing with this as well, which is a blessing in these situations, is that the practitioner did try to fix it, and the practitioner was along with the client on the journey. So one of the first occlusions that I did, which we did together, we had quite horrifying realizations during that, didn't we? That the training academy where this individual actually caused the occlusion, first of all told her that she can inject in an area which, as injectors, we know that you don't, and she went into the 11 lines.
Yeah.
And on top of that, when she sent the image to the training academy and also to the trainer themselves, the response was 72 hours later. And I think their response was along the lines of, if you would like to learn the dissolving protocol, we can get you in next week, and that's £800.
Yeah.
There was no acknowledgement of the situation. There was no urgency. There was no responsibility. There was nothing along those lines. And then again, we've had people that have contacted, so these were clients that came in, they've contacted their practitioners and they were blocked, like Adam said earlier. They were completely ignored. And I think that that's something that in this industry should be highlighted, at the importance of being able to be in contact with your practitioner, and your practitioner trying to fix it is one thing.
Yeah.
And then not being able to, finding people like yourself and not having that fear of, oh, is this client going to think that I'm not good enough? And that fear overtaking, and then ending up just losing your moral compass, I think, in that situation.
Yeah, and this is not just non-medics, by the way. This is everybody. In fact, the VOs that we spoke about on the last one, where we said anyway, we had the 2 people that had 2 VOs.
Yes.
On both of those occasions, I can't remember exactly details, but definitely one of them was done by 2 different doctors, and on both occasions they told her it was an infection.
Yes.
And she needed to get antibiotics and wait. Even on the one where she'd had the second VO, because she'd already had a VO before, she knew that they were incorrect. But the first one, she sort of was inclined to believe and left it too long. Not too long because we fixed it, but left it a long time. So it's not down to any individual group or type of person or anything else. This is just something that just occurs. In fact, one of the worst VO I've ever seen, which was where the lady's nose was almost completely a scab. The lady that treated her was a nurse and disappeared completely. Yeah, told her that she would never do filler again. She couldn't talk to her because she had too much anxiety. She had to hand it over to somebody else. And then very shortly after, all of her page was posting saying she's doing noses and blah, blah, blah. So this is not unique to any group of individuals, because as many times as I've seen it with medics, I've seen it the same, if not more, with non-medics.
Yes.
So yeah, it's not down to a unique individual group, but obviously you should take responsibility for your client stroke patient.
Of course you should. And I think the conversation of medic versus non-medic is something we could talk about for hours, but I think it's more a safe injector versus a non-safe injector, and a good injector versus a not so great injector, because you, again, being a good injector isn't just having these beautiful outcomes, because there's no point having the most perfect nose if in a matter of hours there can be necrosis and they can be left with permanent scarring or worse.
Yeah.
It's about taking responsibility for what you do, and also, again, like we said last podcast, but these are reoccurring themes, about not jumping ahead of yourself. If you maybe did a training course a couple of months ago and then you want to go into these more advanced areas, maybe you need to think, not just are my injections good enough, but is my confidence at the level where I can handle a vascular occlusion, the diagnosis, the treatment, the aftercare.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of our students, they don't need to obsess over that. You know, we try as hard as we can to get them in the position where they can do it, but they do have the utmost support at Eclipse, and they will get resolved, as is always the case. Although, touch wood, our students rarely cause VOs. That I don't remember the last time I saw one from one of our students. It's usually external people. However, in this case today, the lady, the practitioner that brought her in, was a really lovely lady, extremely experienced, very ethical. You can tell she's a good injector, good knowledge, and it's just one of those things that occurred. And actually the reason it occurred was off the back of bad training.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so even though she's a good injector, really you're only as good as you were taught.
Of course you are.
So she was taught something which was blatantly incorrect. There's no opinion on it, it's just incorrect from not from a technique point of view or from an outcome point of view, but from a safety point of view.
Yeah.
So not her fault at all, because how would she ever, this is the thing, it's very rarely the person's fault who causes the problem, because they're just doing what they were taught. You know, the lady, going back to the one with the 11s lines, she was told you're allowed to do that. She was told that the technique that she learned in other places, which was anti-wrinkle with filler, where you do linear threads through the wrinkle, you can do that anywhere in the face. Now that is, by the letter of the law, that is kind of true, because if you're intradermal, you're safe. But you can't expect someone who's brand new to the industry to guarantee that they're intradermal, which is quite a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Especially here where the gap, if you get it wrong, is nothing.
Of course.
So yeah, she did a great job. She done exactly what she was told on the course, but unfortunately they taught her wrong. And now we end up in a situation where we've got her client and friend in this case, who's got an occlusion. And the occlusion, like we said, reached from her chin to her hairline, including her nose, her lips, part of her chin area, her cheek, her eyelid, under her eye, and all the way up into her forehead. And when you look at that, even for us, where we've seen a lot of these things, it still, I don't know, leaves an impression.
It does, and I think what Adam was relaying to the client, and I think this is important to understand their mental well-being at this point. She is in a state of shock. She's in a state of fear. And one thing, again, just to highlight how great the injector was that caused this VO today, was that she did speak to her about this is a chance, there is a potential.
Yeah, I didn't remember that actually.
Yeah.
That is a very true point, and that is so important. That consultation process where you explain all these things, and the aftercare where you tell them how to identify it, is so important, because if they notice it like she did almost instantly when she got home, if you fix it within the first 3 days, she's going to have no damage permanently whatsoever. She's going to be absolutely back to normal. It's the ones that go on longer where they either don't know how to identify it, don't know what they're looking at, or they haven't had it stressed to them that they must tell you no matter how bad they feel about interrupting your day or whatever the case may be.
And that's it. And they were messaging all throughout the night. And then she did bring her back in and was trying to do that. But this, even having that consultation and that aftercare, she was still in a bit of shock. She'd been brought to you, and you had to highlight to her that just because you're the fixer doesn't mean that you don't hold any responsibility.
No.
As soon as they're in with you trying to solve that, which we've had a 100% success rate, you are taking on responsibility for that.
Yeah, 100%. And you don't, even to this day, even after so many, you don't actually realise how hard that responsibility is going to hit you until each individual time, especially one like today where, you know, she's got VOs essentially in multiple locations, and you're going to have to work your way through that to try and fix all of them. It's a lot to take on, but it's worth it, because when you help someone, obviously it feels good, especially in that situation, because if that one was left longer, that would have gone extremely bad.
Yes.
Yeah, so she had the injections done to her yesterday. She came back. Two people tried to dissolve it. Unfortunately, was not able to do that.
And they used
then
5
arrived with
vials.
us today. 5 vials,
Yeah.
And then we went through today and fixed that. And she was good to go. And anyone who's our student in the group chats will have seen the videos before and after. I can't share them on here because I haven't asked for permission, but maybe I'll ask, and if she allows it, we can put it on one of the future ones. But because we've literally just finished.
Yeah. What
This
about?
is not the day after. It was an hour ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And you've not eaten today, bless your heart.
No, but I'm good. So yeah, that was the day today. Now, I think some of the questions that were asked off the back of that, like in the group chats, I think the first one was, where are you going to start? Yeah, because she's got a nose occlusion, lips, this area, I don't know what you'd call it, it's not the chin, but somewhere in between, cheek, again, the lateral sort of portion of her cheek, which is peculiar, eyelid, and then her whole forehead. Yeah. So I am most comfortable fixing VOs in noses purely because I've done so many.
Yes.
So my thought was, it's central, it's right next to where the occlusion was caused in the nasolalar triangle, right in here. And also, it's a good place to start. So started there and basically worked my way out. And I won't go into like ridiculous amounts of detail because I don't think it will really help anyone, but we just fixed one area at a time. And
we're using the ultrasound machine as well, weren't you?
Yeah. Using the ultrasound machine just to identify that there was an improvement, a quick improvement. Pain, she was in agony and then she wasn't, which is not always the case. You can't rely on pain.
No.
And one thing as well to touch on, going back to the lovely lady that caused it, another thing again, which is not her fault at all, she was taught how to do the nasal injection down to bone. And not only was the technique something that you definitely shouldn't do if you're trying to be as safe as possible, albeit maybe it gives great results, but you shouldn't do it. The other thing was the angles were wrong. So when you're injecting this nasolalar triangle, this little triangular dent to the side of the sort of lower portion of the nose, there is an unsafe way of doing it and there is a safer way of doing it, and it all depends on angle and depth, but let's presume we always touch the bone and the entire injection is on the bone.
Yes.
when I asked her how she did it, the injection was sort of a bit of an angle, but directly horizontal. Whereas the way you should do it should always be aiming towards the opposite oral commissure. Yeah, the contralateral oral commissure, if you want to be posh. So it should always be down at an angle, which is taking the needle very perpendicular to the artery, away from the artery. And even that little change in angle from flat towards the opposite oral commissure is a big change anatomically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're not doing your nasos like that, you should do it like that, because it makes no negative and is significantly safer. So,
and I think with just your vocabulary when you're speaking, these areas of the face, there is no way to be safe. Like we spoke about before, the only safe way to inject
yeah, it's not.
is to not. So when he's saying safer, this again links to the last podcast of all of these little steps, and we're talking minute angles here, aren't we?
Yeah, not a lot.
Not a lot, and they do make unsafe areas safer. But when we're talking about the nasos, nose, these are all areas that do run at a much higher risk. And one of the comments that the client made was she was having some pain around the eye, and the injector was worried about blindness and that causing, but you know that if that is to occur, we have got about 10 minutes.
Yeah, it would have been too late.
Yeah.
There are cases of partial loss of areas of your vision, although not many documented to reference. But essentially, if you were to lose vision in an eye, it's less than 10 minutes and it's done, over and done with. There's been 0 successful fixes of an occlusion to the arteries attached to the back of the eye. So that was not the case. She'd had multiple injections over the last sort of 24 hours, and a lot of what she was feeling was just the aftermath of all of the trauma from that. So yeah, but there, massive difference. Everyone's fine now. It was good from a technical perspective to work through it and navigate all of those different occlusions essentially that had happened. But at the same time, unpleasant to see what the injector was having to go through, which I think may sound awful, but is equally as bad as what the client is going through, especially emotionally. And what the client themselves had to go through as well, because actually that entire thing could have been prevented by the correct training.
Of course it could have. And one thing as well with this is it's very important as an injector to not let this completely set you back, because, well, first thing you said to her was inject someone as soon as possible.
100%, yeah.
And she is tomorrow morning doing her clinic day as normal. And
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, as of this moment, and we hope it stays like that. But this thing is she has learnt a lot from this, that she will grow as an injector. She's had the safety of you being able to be there and to help. And I think that's really important, because this sounds quite scary, doesn't it, all of this? But you were teaching, and within how long was that?
Oh, she was there an hour after the call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it was fixed a few hours later,
yeah. And
but
it's worth its weight.
The other thing is as well is, I think probably the most valuable lesson that the injector learned today was there's levels to training. And actually, if you don't receive the correct training, it's a problem. And on top of that, if you're being told by an authority or an authoritative figure, i.e. a training school trainer, why would you not take their word for it?
Of course you would.
You're literally paying them to educate you.
You're paying for their knowledge, and if their knowledge is lacking or actually incorrect, you don't have at that moment in time the backing to have any kind of conversation where I don't think that's true. No. I don't think that's true.
And I don't remember a case where I've had multiple injectors from the same training school. This is, so when you think like over 60 VOs from different training schools, and I'd say the vast majority of those, the injector has been miseducated or not highly enough educated or didn't have the support in place that they needed to in the eventuality of these situations. It shows how much is out there where people are just not being educated in the correct way. And a lot of these things are not like hidden secrets and special things. These are basic things that are just being taught wrong by the wrong people. And it's just the way it is, and it's a terrible situation to be, because people are paying money to be taught incorrectly, to then give somebody a bad experience. And that is the area of the industry, which we'll talk about on another episode, like state of the industry or whatever, that needs to change. It is not, most of the time, the injector. People have these massive negative connotations towards the injectors. And actually, most injectors that I've ever met are just really nice people trying to do a good job.
And want to make people happy.
Yeah. There are bad ones, 100%. There are awful ones out there, no two ways about it. But for the most part, most people are nice, they're decent, they've got good morals, high ethics, looking to do a good job, looking to advance their career, looking to make people happy, looking to make the people look great. And they're being ruined by training that is just not good enough. And it's really awkward when you own a training company and you're kind of saying, look, our training's really good.
Yes.
And lots of other, because not all training is bad either. Not always bad.
No.
But there's a lot, I genuinely think there's a lot more bad than good. It makes it sound like you're just trying to blow, like you're trying to make yours look good and theirs look bad.
Yeah.
But the simple fact of the matter is, as is proved yet again today, my teaching would not have taught that. Our students would never do that. No. In fact, if I put into the group chat, you know, the angles and what was done and et cetera, they'd be like, oh no, like who taught her how to do that? That's terrible, that's not fair.
Yeah.
It's so right. And it's vibrant, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And I think another thing when you have the great training is what we see when these people come in with these occlusions is, let's say they've paid for a course for a week and they have that week, and then there's nothing else.
No. There's
no ongoing support. There's no contact. And I think that the amount of information, if you're going to a decent training academy, is so much and so overwhelming. There should be some kind of online portal where you can recap, online support group chats, because it's even the basic things that you might forget or remember incorrectly.
Yeah.
And those support chats that Eclipse have are so unbelievable, because there's people from training courses that happened 6-7 years ago that can then support the people that trained a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And because everyone started at zero, it's an open and welcoming environment, whereas some of these groups I'm on some of the pages on Facebook, and the abuse and the negativity that goes around is awful.
Yeah, absolutely awful. Yeah, I don't advise those Facebook groups at all.
They're
unless
horrific.
You've got very good at isolating bad information and not taking anything to heart, because some of the advice you see on there is absolutely mental. But yeah, the good thing is that there are resources available to people. Yeah. Annie and I, for example, we've got a group chat that is not for our Eclipse students. It is for anybody who has no support. Mm-hmm. So if you are one of those people that feels like you have got no support, you wouldn't know what to do in the case of an emergency, you didn't train directly with us, you can leave a comment below and I'll put the group name and you can join the group, and then that way if anything happens you can put it in there and there will be people that will help you, or me, or someone who works with me who can help you. So there are resources available that are good resources with nice people.
Yes.
Because there's no abusive things or derogatory comments or anything like that. Everybody is taken as a human being and treated as such.
Of course.
Because don't forget, these things can happen to anyone.
Anyone.
Doesn't matter how good you are.
Doctors.
Yeah, anyone.
Anyone.
It doesn't matter.
Anyone.
I said this actually earlier to my student. She, I can't remember what the question was now, but she said to me, I can't remember what it was. But anyway, the point was, my reply was that VOs are more unlucky than they are down to bad technique. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you increase your chances of being unlucky by having bad technique,
of course,
and by not applying rules to your injecting. But actually, you could have someone who's a phenomenal, safe injector who gets a VO, and you could have the worst injector in the world doing just as many people and never get a VO.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't really like luck because I don't believe in luck, but bad luck is definitely an element of it.
Yes.
And in this case today, it all was an element of bad luck,
yes,
but actually it was increased in bad luck by the wrong technique that she was taught. And she has zero blame at all.
Zero.
But this is the thing that annoys me, without being too negative. I feel so bad for these students that get taught the wrong things and then have issues off the back of it.
It infuriates me, and what else infuriates me is hearing the amount of money that individual has spent.
Yeah, sometimes they've had to save or borrow or whatever the case may be. And it's super infuriating that they get taught the wrong things. Now, what you have to, this is what we were speaking about before, the difference between opinion and facts.
Yes.
Because this is where you get the grey area that makes it super complex, because you might have a way of injecting lips that you think is the best. I might have a way of injecting lips that I think is the best, and none of us are right and none of us are wrong. It's just an opinion, it's a take, it's a taste, it's whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
However, there are things that are categorically wrong
yes.
and right. For example, the correct way, and the undebatably correct way, if safety is your paramount, which it is me, mm-hmm. If safety is not your paramount, by the way, and the outcome is, this is not the best way.
Yeah.
But if safety is your paramount, the best way to do the nasolabials at the very top, if you're trying to correct the very top portion, the nasolabial triangle, is to point towards the opposite oral commissure, go down, touch bone, aspirate. We'll talk about aspiration in 5 seconds. Do your injection and come out, and don't put too much in. Now, that's the most important thing. In terms of aspiration, this is another key thing, because the lady today did aspirate, and so do most people say they aspirated when they cause an occlusion. Aspirations are not 100%, they're not even 50%. In fact, they're either 100% or 0%, because they either work or they don't work. So when people give these statistics of their 30%, I don't know how that's worked out, but in reality, they either work or they don't. Now, today, a product was used, a sub-Q product was used, and it was used with a 27 gauge needle. And I haven't tried this since, but from what I remember, I don't think a 27 gauge needle with sub-Q aspirates. Mm-hmm. So this is the other thing. I see so many people online aspirating with combinations that I know don't work. So, for example, if you used to put a 30 gauge needle on a sub-Q, there's no way in the world that is aspirating. 27 gauge is probably debatable. We'd have to try it loads of times and see what happens. But I know for a fact a 25 gauge with sub-Q definitely aspirates. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact a 27 gauge with Juvederm Voluma aspirates. I know for a Juvederm Voluma with a 25 gauge aspirates. I know Juvederm Voluma with a 30 gauge probably won't aspirate. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to aspirate, you've definitely got to make sure that your combination of needle size and length against product is going to aspirate. Otherwise, there's no point doing it.
Of course.
Which is crazy. And this is, sorry to interrupt.
No,
this is another thing. I don't think she'd ever had that explained to her, whereas I explain that to every single student, even on a foundation course. So there's so many elements to being safer that aren't being taught. Whereas actually there's such small little details. Having an unprimed needle, using a needle with a product that definitely aspirates, you know, all the other things we've spoken about, putting in small amounts, low pressure, like there's a billion different things that you can do, aspiration. And we should be doing every single one of them on every single injection. And I do, and that's why at the end of an injecting day, I'm shattered, because every single injection is taking the most insane amount of thought and procedure and mental model to do. It's not, I don't just go, oh, bang, inject, go. I'm thinking of my whole list of safety things on every single injection, as well as watching the area, looking at their reaction, looking at the result, because that's a key thing as well. If you are injecting and you're not seeing an instant result in what it is that you're doing, chances are that is going off somewhere else. You should be seeing instant reaction. So I like to feel with my finger some sort of rise or inflation or whatever the case may be. And all these things added together can make you so much safer. And if you get into a situation like that poor lady was today, the injector, by the way, at least you, at the end of it, you can say, no, I did every single thing, which she probably felt like she did, but has been miseducated or undereducated, which I think is just annoying.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to say. In her mind, she has probably completed every step, and she was very coherent. She was very knowledgeable.
Yeah, smart, experienced. Yeah.
Smart experience.
But at the end of the day, if you could be, you could have been playing tennis like your whole life, and if the tennis champion comes on, I can't think of any names, Federer comes along and tells you, you should do this like this. This is the way to do it. You're just going to do it.
Yeah, of course you are.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Yeah, and the problem is so many people are getting it wrong.
Yes.
And it's kind of inexcusable from the academies, because it's their job to get it right. And when we first started teaching fillers, like long time ago, years ago, 6-7 years ago, there was no information. Every single thing I learned, we had to drag it out of little tiny tidbits of information, whereas now the information is vast.
I was scrolling on TikTok this morning on my business page, and it was how to inject the marionette, how to do a Russian lip with me, and the comments are wild, because it's people saying
an opinion.
Or I've got a client in today, I'm going to try this. What product did you use? And I'm thinking, where's your training? You've watched a 15 or 60 second video on TikTok. What certificate do you hold? How many people have you injected? And it's just, again, like what Adam said, it's an opinion. That might be somebody's preference on how to do lips, and then it's somebody else's. It's almost like an overload of information, and you have to filter through what is fact and what is fiction in some cases.
Yeah, that is the most important thing, is to somehow come to a conclusion as to whether or not you're listening to the right information that you're going to use, because I forget that saying now. What is it? It's like, no information is better than bad information, or something like that.
I've not heard it, but it's quite good.
I'm sure there's a phrase like that, or like bad information is dangerous, or something like that. And it's true as well, because, you know, I've seen people saying things on TikTok about what you should be doing, and I would never comment or anything like that, but they're so wrong. And I think all these people that are saying in the comments, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, they're wrong. And they're not wrong as in, oh, I think I can do it better, or my technique's a little bit better than yours, or anything like that. It's wrong because it's factually wrong.
Yes.
And their reasonings are wrong, their anatomy's wrong. It's not an opinion, because you could argue all day long. Let's say, for example, like when I do Botox, I use a little syringe and I use a TSK invisible needle. Let's say you use a BD syringe.
Yeah.
You could argue yours is better. I could argue mine is better. We could both come up with good arguments for it and against it, but none of us are right and none of us are wrong. It's just a take. However, there are so many things that are not just opinion. They're not just takes, they're fact.
Yes.
And those are the things that I wish that there was more understanding around. And when I teach, I try to even say to people quite regularly, this is my opinion. oh, and by the way, no, this is a fact. This is undebatable. Just so they build up this better idea in their minds about what is right and wrong. Because this is the other thing as well that comes off the back of it. And a lot of this sounds really negative, so I hope if it's not ridiculously negative. But if, say, Roger Federer tells you, you should play tennis like this, you then go into the sports club and tell all your friends to play like this. But, you know, he was drunk that day and totally misinformed you.
Yeah.
Like,
he didn't have his glasses on.
no, whatever the case may be. Obviously, that's not the situation normally. It's just someone pushing bad information. But what I mean is it spreads.
Of course it does. And misinformation spreads like a wildfire because it's normally a way of cutting a corner, or it happens. We can go into this all day and maybe it'll be another episode, but it's the same as bad products or unlicensed products. And what happens is someone goes, oh, hi hun, I've used this brand on this set of lips, they've come out lovely, it's only £7. Why don't you try this on your client?
Yeah, it was great.
It was great.
I loved it, and it's really cheap.
Yeah, it's so cheap. It's great.
Don't worry about CE logos.
No, don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about licensing. It's fine. So
it's cheap because no one's ever tested it.
Yeah,
But that's okay. And I did one person.
Yeah, and it's great, and that's what happens. And some of that is again, you could go, oh, it's her opinion that it's great, but no. When you can buy dermal filler from Amazon, eBay, Shein, Temu, most people who are listening to this are automatically thinking, no, that's not real. That doesn't happen.
It does.
It
Do you
does.
remember that case where the lady bought some filler, but it wasn't actually filler from Amazon and made her face blow up like a big boil?
Yeah, and because it wasn't filler, you couldn't dissolve it because the hyaluronidase wasn't reacting with it because
it was
wasn't
something
filler.
completely different. Yeah. But she just thought it was filler for whatever reason. But why Amazon are selling anything with a needle is beyond me. But there you go. So yeah, that was today. Let's end on a more positive note because actually, lovely injector, very ethical, very moral, very experienced, really supportive, literally holding the lady's hand the whole way through it. Also didn't have the arrogance to not seek help, which is another big thing as well. So many people would be afraid, oh, I'm just going to look like an idiot if I have help.
Exactly.
Well, not at all, really.
You would look like an idiot if you didn't have help.
No.
Help is there because it's help.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, great. The other lady, really lovely lady, the lady that happened to, and is all fixed. We'll monitor her for the next couple of weeks. She's going to be fine. It was nowhere near far enough for her to have any permanent damage. So worst case scenario is we haven't fully fixed it because this was an entire facial VO on one side, in which case we'll troubleshoot as and when, if that happens, which I very much doubt. And it's been a good result because if that lady hadn't have managed to contact us, there's no hospital that's going to help.
No.
There's very few people that are going to be better than the lady that couldn't fix it herself. So it's a bad situation. But as it ended up, we've fixed it all. She's going to be fine. Everyone will be great. She'll probably have filler again in the future, and hopefully, and that's that really.
It is, every cloud does have a silver lining because she has learnt from this. The client isn't looking at her friend now with the corner of her eye. She's actually grateful that the friend not only spoke her through the issues before in the consultation and in the aftercare, but she's grateful that her friend reached out to you to help.
Sorry, I'm not being rude. Just before we do end, I'm going to quickly go on a group chat because I asked if anyone wanted to ask any questions. So just to see if anyone's got any questions. There's people asking about the complications and dissolving course, which we run at Eclipse. It's a one-day course and we do ridiculous amounts of complications and everything else. We go through that.
And it is also spoken about on the foundation dermal fillers. So if you're watching this as somebody who is interested in getting into aesthetics, there is a fast track into aesthetics at Eclipse where we do heavily concentrate on complications and dissolving as well. Yeah, so that's a great course to do. We go through the whole anatomy, we go through
dissolving, emergency dissolving, how to do it, why to do it. And in fact, next week I think we'll talk a bit more about dissolving and some details of the best way to go about it in an emergency. I did the whole thing today with a cannula, and next week we'll explain why.
Yeah.
So that's my teaser.
I like that
I'm
teaser.
teasing.
That's a good one. That's
Yeah.
a good one.
So yeah, we'll leave it there. But thank you to you for coming and doing this with me.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you to our really lovely ladies that we met today through a bad situation. It would have been nice to meet you through a better situation, but I'll take it. And yeah, that's the end. Hopefully they're fully on the mend, and we'll keep you updated with the progress.
And any questions that you guys have that you would like us to answer on regards to this podcast, or any topics that you would like us to review in any other podcasts, give us a comment.
Leave it there, yeah. But yeah,
Bye
see
bye.
ya.